Hello, and welcome to the Purple Rock Survivor podcast, where we have smashed the hourglass to undo the horribleness of what was last week, a podcast without me. So I am your host, Andy, and with me, making her season 41 debut, Emma. Emma, welcome to finally being on the show this season.
Thank you. Yes, it is a little trickier for me these days to get on, so I'm glad we were able to make it work. It helps that you are in a reasonable time zone and not one that's dumb and later.
It's slightly dumb to get into local politics. We lost the vote to get rid of daylight savings time, like 51% to 49%, and I'm not over it yet.
I'm pretty sure we passed it a while ago, but like nothing's happened. It was just like we passed the ability to maybe get rid of it someday, maybe.
Yeah. I think the discussion, and this is what people tuned in for, so let's go deep, is that there were people who didn't like the idea of stopping the clock, but didn't like stopping it at that point, which maybe would have put me in a worse time zone. I didn't do the math. I wasn't sure if I'd be aligned with you then suddenly, or the people one time zone over that don't count. More importantly, if it could such be a thing. Since this is your first time on the show this season, I was interested in hearing what your thoughts of the season are so far.
Yeah, I think it's, first of all, it's interesting, like Twitter, as is its way, is very like either this is terrible or this is amazing. And I'm just like I'm having a good time. And I think some stuff is like a little dumb and frustrating, but that happens a lot of seasons. And I'm having a good time. I can't even really be like, it's just so good to have Survivor back. Like, it totally is, but I spent a lot of the off season finally, after 9 years being together, getting my husband to watch some old seasons with me. And he's like, he had plans to do trivia with friends on Wednesday. And he's like, don't worry, I'm not going to go until after Survivor. Like, oh my God. So that's been very exciting. But and he's been watching live with me. So the most recent season he'd watched was Heroes versus Villains. So there is
basically the same.
He was like 3 tribes, like that was a lot. So oh my, what a world. I don't want to, I won't get into it too much because you might be able to overhear, but I'm very excited for us to watch Philippines in the next off season. I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I don't know if that actually answered your question or not, but
my takeaway is that you're enjoying it and you think it's good. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I wouldn't say like, oh, this is definitely gonna be one of the best seasons ever, but like I'm having fun and that's what I'm here for.
Yeah. Frankly, it is ridiculous to claim that about any season in progress. I feel like it's better to make that judgment at least when it's over. And frankly, there is often a little too rushed, but we'll probably make you do that when the season's over anyway, because content.
I don't want to rank anymore.
Never. You didn't want to rank earlier, so what has
never
changed?
Do.
How about this episode? So we undo everything apparently last time, because that's how time travel works. If you go back in time, it immediately changes the events. You don't have to like step on the butterfly or anything.
We completely swapped who's podcasting.
That's right. So. Look at this. She breaks an hourglass and then suddenly we get a much better duo. Layers and chaos theory constantly. Did you like this part of the episode? We don't have to talk about last week.
Yeah, fuck that part.
That one sucked.
We really liked it. I was like, even right before that, I was like, I'm so glad I'm podcasting this week. Like, they wanted me last week and I was not available, and that was a freebie. No, this was a blast. I feel like we're gonna have a lot to talk about. It definitely was like a little chaotic. I could see it being overwhelming for some people, but like, this was fun. Like, and because of some of the mechanics, I feel like I don't, necessarily know what's going to go next, even though I think we both kind of expected Sydney to be the one to go. I didn't expect it to be like that. I'll tell you that. That's not how I saw it going.
Like going in, for one, I hoped it would be Sydney because of the 6 options, because we knew it was going to be these 6. There was no doubt. There was no mystery involved in Erica's decision.
Even CBS was like, yeah, here's a spoiler in the promo pics. You all know.
She was the best option. She was the one, for one, not only because of those 6, the one I like the least, the one that's least interesting, which isn't the same as being the least interesting among the 12. Because she's not that. But also, it was also the one that I know people aren't going to spend much time complaining about getting screwed over this. And if I wanted to really put behind what I believe was a bad decision by the show, that's probably not going to happen if like Evie or Nasir or Deshaun go home, even if somehow if it would recover and still be a good season after that. Honestly, I had Danny second in the acceptable rankings. Ricard.
Yeah, no, I just was being sucky,
but yeah, I wanted it to be Sydney, but I also felt like it was probably going to be Sydney, just because if you kind of game out who's got connections here or there and what needs to happen, frankly, who the other side, who is now immune, like the least, I also thought it would be her. But as the episode goes on, I didn't think it was going to be Evie, because that one was revealed too early in the episode, although by the time I got nearer to the end of Tribal Council, I'm like, maybe it is. So just that, while it ended up being what I thought it was by no means predictable. So yeah, and also, I really enjoyed this episode. You go.
The people I imagined voting with Sydney and voting for Sydney were not the people who ended up voting with or for Sydney. So like, it's so funny it's very like, in terms of predicting, it's very like right answer, wrong formula, which, is typically how I solved every math problem in high school. So it works out. Turns out just guessing and checking over and over is not like how you're supposed to do it.
I feel like you wouldn't get full marks for that, at least where, back in the day when I was. If they made you show your work, they'd be like, yes, but no.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. And if we were still doing predictions, I think that's how it would have gone. It'd be a lot of like, you really sold past the close there. Yeah, it was fun. It was a good outcome. A lot of people have given, Sydney some Corinne comparison, so really slots in nicely with the Caramoan of it all. Not that I think this season is otherwise anything at all like Caramoan, but it just commenting on. Okay, can I just say this is a fucking merge? Like, what the hell? you haven't made the merge. It's like they're all voting.
Yep.
And they're not going back to tribe, so it's not like this. And like, oh, she didn't make the jury. Well, that's happened before. Yep. So shut up, Jeff. This is a merge.
It 100% is a merge, except in the most inconsequential way, in that Sydney is not going to get merge points in our worthless fantasy game. I don't do the scoring. That post isn't going to be out till Monday, but spoiler alert, she will not, because the show said she didn't make the merge, whatever that is.
My fantasy game ended many moons ago when I traded Sarah for Voce. And I also had JD. So, I have simply stopped looking.
There you go. Mine ended the moment I found myself hoping that Jacqueline would succeed over Natalie in the final vote for like half a second, just a half a second. That's like, no, I can never let this happen again, because that would obviously be a horrible thing. Natalie was awesome. That's when it ended.
What a great season to bring up fantasy points. I wonder who won that one. Were they amazing?
Clearly it wasn't me. My team of Jacqueline and whoever, Kelly Wentworth, actually. Last season, actually, I did play, but I don't think my heart was in it when I drafted Team Romber. It wasn't really.
Oh, come on.
That was about playing the role that has shaped me, which I might do as well tonight, as everybody listening or watching is turning around, staring at Bart Simpson, waiting for the line. It's not happening yet. Yeah, so I really dug this episode. As you say, it might be hard for some people to follow. I don't care about those people. I can't I again, I get it, and I'm not saying that you're wrong,
Mr. Rama.
But for me, I can't pretend like that's a problem. Make it more complicated. It will take a lot to confuse me. So the fact that there was like a lot going back and forth, I thought really worked in terms of its favor. And this gets back into the discussion that we have ad nauseum every week, because there's very little we love more than being a dead horse, is the complaints about advantages. Well, the weird thing is, first off, yeah, there's probably too many. And the most recent one they did, I disagree with wholeheartedly. But I also think that this episode proved a lot of things about it. But that's my rant that I'll get into next. What did you think about how like the advantages shaped this episode?
Yeah. So one thing I think you kind of were alluding to before we started recording, so I think the previously on just really kind of hammers in the like, guys, did no one while it's like, to me, I was like, did no one while editing this be like, maybe we overdid it a little? It's like,
I kind of like the previously on though, just because it's like, that's a lot. Yeah, that is a lot.
Yeah, but like,
I like that they gave it all, because if they just gave a couple, that'd be a spoiler.
Right, it gives it away. No, I think the way they did it is good, but like, I do think when you lay it all out there, it's like, guys, what are we doing? Oh no, I said guys. But like, people.
I mean, let's be real. They might, the people saying it probably said guys. You know?
Oh, for sure. Also, I think the show is fallen back, but it's I think a lot. I think like many things, you know, the outcast twist, bad idea. It worked out. Edge of extinction, bad idea.
Did not work out.
Hottest winter ever. So
yeah.
Who can complain, right? Hurley Tennis, if you're listening, I love your support on that front.
Hey, everybody else got what they wanted. They didn't want Rick Devens to win. Congratulations.
Exactly. Which, like, there was something beautiful there. It was real. I believe we've had commenters point out what a beautiful monkey's paw situation that truly was. And another twist I was gonna say, but I can't remember now, so instead I'm gonna say like Final Four Fire. We don't like that, but like it was a cool moment in Winners at War, like very emotional, like character building, and also like definitely improved Ghost Island.
Yeah,
like the Ghost Island finale was like fire, no pun intended, even though the rest of the season was a little like so sometimes David versus Goliath, that was what I was thinking. The idol nullifier, I think we all kind of agree, is like not really a super cool advantage to be out there, but like, man, did it pay off that time. And we will not speak of the other time it was used, because I will cry.
Let's talk about the one where it existed and nobody gave a shit because it meant nothing. That's the other time.
That was about, right? Also upsetting.
Yes, actually, it's true. That's the advantage you give her.
She was so soft.
Yeah, no, I mean, I do think that advantages, like, for one, there's definitely too many now in this very season. Some of that could be because it's like, wow, nobody played them the entire pre-merge. That's insane. That doesn't happen. But also,
no, what are you talking about? They just played an extra vote this clearly pre-merge tribal council.
No, because the people who played it, no, you're right. Shan played it and he hadn't made the merge yet. That's right. I was thinking about the other one because there's a lot. It's so fucking stupid. It is. I was going to say that Xander and all of them made the merge, but that wasn't the advantage that was played. I do think the show will miss. But I do think it is a positive for the show that they try to innovate. And I think what this episode really showed for me is why innovation is necessary in the first place, because we saw a lot of high level gameplay throughout the end game of this episode that shows that like these people need new challenges. Everybody kind of, not everybody, but enough players now know like the game, the handbook, know the rules and what you're supposed to do in this scenario versus that scenario, that if it's just the same stuff, if Survivor, is frozen in ember from whatever you particular complainer about advantages felt was the peak period, which should be noted is never like the same. People seem to be okay with changes until a certain point. And it's generally at the point in which their fandom crossed over from watching something they enjoy to an obsession that they turned on. But if you just stuck in that time, then I don't think this episode would have been very interesting, because we see players like Evie and like Deshawn they know the move, they know the counter move, they know the counter to the counter move. We saw it happen in real time. They were doing all of this in like maximum 3 hours they had from the time they found out that they weren't actually immune, and that like these 5 people who weren't in the plans at all because the show told them they couldn't be in the plans were suddenly the entire plans. They had 3 hours to work all of that out, plus all of these brand new, as the pre-roll showed us, mounds and mounds of advantages, and then more of them at tribal council where they stop and like move the counter move in this, and it's like, oh, did you tell Tiffany this? Well, now we have to change this. So like it just shows
people be telling Tiffany things, man.
Yeah, it just shows to me that's why the show has to evolve, because if it just played straight to whatever season was your favorite, I get the sense most people I don't think are trying to pull the show back to the single digits. But I don't know how many people want to escape the teens, because most people agree the early 20s weren't very good. Maybe it's the late 20s. Most people complain about the 30s.
The earliest 20s.
Yeah. Let's bring all the show back to the season that had the greatest cast ever of mostly returnees. Why can't it just be like that all the time? But yeah, if you kept it that way, then I think most of these people would just know what to do. They would know what to do in their sleep. So I think the show does have to find new things in order to keep the gameplay fresh. And that's what, like this episode, what excited me is a lot of fresh gameplay. Does it mean that they're going to nail it all? If they were 100% on their advantages, then they'd be wasting their skills in like producing reality television. They should be doing something like a higher calling if somehow they can succeed in everything they try. But I do think that it's admirable and it's important for the show to change things.
There wasn't like a question there, so
no. Look, I don't like asking questions. I like answering the questions. So I stop talking. Sometimes I grab something to drink, and then the other person talks at therapy.
Yeah. I mean, truly don't know what else to say there. Great.
I mean, I guess you could say no, in a while. It's wrong. You should watch the Australian Survivor, and you'll know that they don't need any of these things.
I don't watch that. I don't want to. It's too much.
Also, like, aren't these international seasons the ones that like have Adam going up there and trying to play podiums and shit? Like, I refuse to believe that these shows don't also have stuff, since the other things I hear about them constantly are people saying, oh yeah, Survivor just ripped that off from the show that I think is superior. Which is it?
What I have learned, and you were privy to, is that like non-English speaking Survivor is batshit. And like, I don't mean that to be like, because I don't speak English. I mean to be that it's 100 days and it seems to be live like Big Brother, and they vote, like fans vote for people, and then they just sometimes like bring in more people like from the cast and stuff that I couldn't even understand. And it is, what a world. In a way that almost made me want to try to seek it out, but I doubt there's like subtitles of Romanian Survivor out there. Maybe I could do Survivor Spain and understand just enough. But my listening on that is not as good as my reading. Anyway, yeah, I don't watch Australian Survivor. I don't watch South African Survivor. I watch so much TV as it is. I just can't do more. I mean,
ultimately, it's cool. I'm sure the people watch it, like it. Frankly, it's so much that, and it requires a level of effort and time investment that it'd be weird that the people who watch it didn't like it. Like, I feel like if you're watching it, you've already told me that you like it a lot. So, and how much are you going to question that you're doing that with your life? I feel like if it wasn't good, I would hope that you wouldn't. But 28 episodes a year of Survivor is enough for me. I don't need more. I mean, you're rewatching older stuff with somebody for the first time. I did some of that too. That's a little different. Yeah. But even there, like, I wouldn't have done it if Survivor wasn't gone for so long. Yeah.
Right, exactly. Like I'm definitely not like throwing on an old season now. We have to wait till like another off season, because that's just a lot to keep track of. There's, as we've discussed, enough to keep track of as it is. Although that's never been like the kind of thing I have trouble, like people are even just like in the first episode, like my mom will be like, who's what name and who what, and I'm like, I got the names, like that's down, who has the advantage. But that's just kind of how my brain works, and other people's brains work differently, and that's totally fine. They probably know how to do math with the correct formulas. Bringing it back.
That's right. Full circle. To turn back time, as one does by breaking an hourglass.
God, okay, I just poor Erica having to say those lines.
I mean, did she
and
have
I
to,
changed the course of history. I feel like they made her say.
I bet they wanted her to.
Yes.
As should be established, the show can't make.
Made, yeah, you're right. Made is not quite the right word, but I think it was heavily recommended.
Yeah. I'm sure it made them very happy. And to be fair to her, it might be hard to find your own words to describe something so stupid.
I would just be like, so I decided to have immunity because I haven't seen you all for 2 days. I don't know what's going on, so I better like be safe. And you would all do the same. Yeah,
I feel like that's what I would do. You know, it's just like say, this is what I could do. I would probably avoid the time metaphors because I'm troubled by them personally. This is like, yeah, the show gave me the opportunity to undo what it is and got myself immunity. That's where we're at. And maybe they'd say cut, try it again, but yeah, it's also possible that she wasn't as creative a speaker. I don't know. I don't hear her speak very often. But yeah, to get back to that, I think before we can get in more into what we liked about how this episode played out and the advantages were in, we should talk about how this whole thing starts under that circumstance, that a lot of things happen that maybe shouldn't have happened at all. And since we weren't on the podcast last week or anything like that, like, I think I dislike this advantage greatly. But do we think it was unfair? Or was it more unfair to certain people, or the fairness discussion? Let's get it out of the way before we talk about what we do like.
Yeah, I mean, fairness is always a tricky thing to talk about in Survivor, right? As we kind of alluded to with other twists that have happened, like a lot of things haven't been fair. The Outcast twist isn't fair because they didn't know, anytime basically they don't know something.
They didn't know.
Yeah, the first Redemption Island, I don't believe.
I think they did because I think they told Robin.
I mean, Lord knows I'm not rewatching that one, so I don't remember.
I might have, whatever.
Like Juan and Jonathan didn't know that if you get picked last, like you're not on the show. Yeah. So,
and it should be noted, like, there are people who at every one of those turns would also have been like, this is unfair. Like, right. So it's not an inconsistency.
I'm not even saying I necessarily don't think that those things are unfair, but I think to sound like a parent talking to their teen about life, like Survivor isn't fair sometimes. And it sucks. And I absolutely understand Danny's gripes with it, yes. Especially because he's an athlete, but honestly, even if he's not, it's almost, I mean, everyone knew that he's going to be good at challenges, so it's not quite that, but it's almost how in Token Sheen, so maybe I'm just saying this because I watched it recently, Tyson wins the first immunity challenge, and then Joe Dowdle gets medevac, and then people are like, oh, that Tyson, he's a physical threat. Like, maybe we should take an opportunity when we can. Oh, this next challenge, shuffleboard? Like, let's get him out now. That he's showed himself as like a beast in challenges, but again, I mean, like, we knew, and then doesn't even get anything to show for it, and it, like, that sucks and it's shitty, and I totally get that. I don't think it's necessarily unfair to like a single person, because it's a whole group. They all have the same opportunity at that point to win immunity, to have bonds, etc., etc. You could argue that it would be like maybe more unfair to like, well, no, I mean, I think it's less unfair than what happened to Michelle Yee in Fiji.
Yep.
Also, I mean, what happened to Michelle Yee in real life, but that is a different story. But that she was, stuck with people who she didn't work with. In this, everyone's voting. Like, like you and I were saying, we didn't think the people who voted with Sydney and like voted against Sydney would be the ones who did. I kind of expected that the Yase and, remaining UA people, maybe would team up, or like, maybe an Erica and Heather in there to get rid of Sydney as like that option to get rid of, and that, maybe Deshaun and Danny just kind of have to deal with it because they're like, well, at least it's not a man type of thing, which I think ultimately was like
probably part of
it, but in a different like extent, in that Shan and Liana weren't like arguing for it to be Sydney, which is something else I will talk about later. But whereas like, say if it was just the people who are eligible were voting, that would be very unfair to like an Evie. And you couldn't even really say like a Ricard the same way, because like their tribe lost everyone. He was never going to have a majority. He won immunity. He did what he had to do. But so like, is it unfair? Like, yeah, kind of, but it happens a lot. So
yeah. I mean, whoever said Survivor was fair is kind of the point you're getting at. Yes. The other thing is, like, I think the most unfair element of this is the simple fact that only half the people were not immune. In fact, less than half of the people were immune. And I think I understand where people aren't latching on. Like, there's so much happening. It's hard to say, but it's like, if they had just said that, like, if they'd never turned back time, it would be ridiculous that like the people who drew the same colored rock as Danny are immune and the other people aren't, and Erica isn't because she drew a different color rock. Like that is the structure that's unfair. Turning back time feels really crappy to the people who competed in a challenge, but it was already unfair, and it's just become unfair in another way. Like that, and I say that saying that they shouldn't do this. And why I think they shouldn't do it is you should not teach your players or your audience in a contest that the results don't matter, that this is something that could go away at any time. And the contest I'm referring to specifically is a challenge. Obviously, the contest of Survivor, everything's changing all the time.
I mean, it's sort of the same issue as some of these like negative advantages. Now, the beware advantage this season is a little different because you're risking something, but you are ultimately getting stuff. But then if you think about, to an extent, like the extortion of Tony Vlachos, but more so Jamal, in the season that shall not be named, like when there's never been a downside to like pulling something out of a tree before, right? And then it's just like, you fucked up, shouldn't have done that. Here's a piece of paper and a pencil. It wasn't even a pen.
Yeah. Yes, all the clues come in pencil.
Boggles. Anyway, I cannot talk about that, or I will.
Yeah. No, and it's
come
just
out
like
of my ears, but. Yeah, it's the same. It's like you don't want people. I mean, it was funny for Jeannie, but like you ultimately want people to get these advantages, and you want people to want to win challenges, or at least only throw them because they have like a specific plan, and not because they're afraid if they don't throw it, they somehow won't be immune.
Yeah. No, that's why self-gambling is the worst crime in sport. Is it as damaging as, maybe drugs or like real life crime? No. But what the gambling does is call into question the validity of the contest in the first place. And that is an incredibly slippery slope. Why are we investing our time and attention in watching this thing if the people competing in it aren't also invested in it? And obviously, when it comes to sports, there are teams that try to like lose on purpose in order to like gain draft picks or whatever. But for one time, people are kind of in on that. They understand the game. And that's what's happening here. If you're introducing sometimes you win, but you didn't, is like, well, then should we care who wins? And then in this specific instance, the people who won did nothing wrong. There was nothing they could have done. I know some people tried to game it out because it's easier for you to assume and think like, well, you should have done this. This isn't their fault. They should have chosen Nasir. As if Nasir also wouldn't have chosen to be immune, right? So they choosing Erica wasn't a mistake. The show forced them. They couldn't opt out of choosing someone. And as soon as you chose someone, that person was going to do what Erica does. So it feels like
it's not like it was it's not like it was like a schoolyard pick. And so they left those people out. Like it was a completely random draw. So it's just, and like, I actually find the idea of like only half of the, I mean, I know it ended up being a little more, but only half of them being available to vote to be kind of an interesting thing. But just this entire, obviously you can do it like excessively, more, really even more than once probably, but it did make for kind of an interesting wrinkle, albeit one I kept forgetting. At a point of like, why don't they just vote for Tiffany? Oh yeah. Not that they like, but just in a sort of like voting for Jeffra type of thing. And it, so that was like an interesting concept, but just everything else about how this worked was just like dumb and bad.
Yeah. Well, again, my argument about like half people being immune is about fairness, not necessarily about interest or goodness.
Sure.
Right? For me, what's bad about it is that I watched something and then was told that it didn't matter. And again, in all these things, I care about what's good for me.
And that there wasn't enough of a reason, like there was no actual suspense. As soon as they're like, and Erica, you'd be immune, it's like, why didn't you just take out the hammer and be like, okay, fuck you. Like, I'm sorry, I'm really earning our explicit rating today. But
I freaked out when that thing they had footage of it still intact. Like, why is that still unbroken? It feels like it's the next day. That better have been footage from a previous day.
Oh, poor girl happened to be in the rain. Like it's barely rained there at all. And then she's completely alone. That blows. So anyway, I'm glad that she was immune, because it's just like she deserved to like have a freaking break.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like it's a bad idea. I don't want them to ever do it again. It did result in a far more interesting episode. We talked about that even before the episode aired. If it hadn't happened, this would have been most likely, obviously things can change, immunities can be won, but most likely this would have led to like a near unanimous chalk vote of Erica. Instead, it was like, man, the candidates for being voted out all have interesting possibilities. For one, more interesting characters than Erica, who is not a character on the show. But for two, they all had some kind of interconnection with the Alliance of Four that we saw. So it's like something's going to happen. So it did lead to an interesting episode. Time will tell whether it leads to an interesting season or not. But I did want to kind of get that out of the way. It's like, how all this went down probably shouldn't have happened, because turning back time was stupid. Making these people unimmune, it was stupid. I did like the Shan trying to talk Danny down, because it's like, I'm not saying this isn't bullshit, but we have like no time. We got to get on and do this. And now is not the time for the anger and all this. We need to
sue them after the show, man. We don't have time for this.
So I just want to get that out of the way. So now we can talk about like the rest of the episode, because I think even though maybe it shouldn't have happened, I loved everything that happened afterwards. Like, I think this was just a dynamite episode. So it all comes to the head of Tribal. So that's where we'll structure our conversation, because all of the moves that are happening after kind of happen with here. I honestly struggled to how to format this. So we'll just go with who impressed you the most with what they did this episode and at Tribal?
I think the now known as a Yase 3, and then also Deshaun, I think really knew what he had to do to stay alive. He understood he was in danger, and he fixed it. Was able to like keep himself safe. Then obviously like Xander was that great move, but I think it was really a team effort for sure.
Let's talk about that real quick, because I also believe I have no problem crediting it to the three. I mean, it required all three of them in order for it to happen.
Right.
But it's also interesting how like commenters are just quick to be like, well, that probably couldn't have been Xander. It's like, do we do that a lot with other people who like actually do the thing that we see with our eyes and be like, that had to have been that other person? Do we just do it when the person like pretty or something?
Yeah, I mean, I more think just because of the fact that it's almost sort of like this is going to be a weird comparison, but like in sorry Eric, Eric giving away immunity, like it was originally Cerie's idea, right? But it takes all four to execute it. Or sort of like how Ricard comes up with ideas that Shan executes. Like, I don't know which one of the three was like, Tiffany should have it, but it required them all to play a part. and they did that. So that's what matters to me, whoever thought of it, whatever, but like one of them, messes that up and it's all over. So he does a great job with acting like he got it and all of that, and like saying everything and the bravado of like going to play, being willing to play it too, and understanding that like everyone knows I have this, so it's not that valuable. I think that's actually very intelligent, especially for like a 20-year-old to kind of realize, and someone who probably knows he's going to be a target pretty early in the march just because of his archetype. I think that actually impressed me a lot, that he was just like, you know what, I need to keep this ally, especially in this situation where they kind of can regroup later. It's like because of the half and half thing, it's like it's not necessarily like that everyone on the other side is like dead to them forever, right? And then for Evie to kind of still be like, yes, I am working with you, Liana, my partner. I definitely don't think you have betrayed me already. And like being, so clearly worried. Maybe a little less points for wanting that idol, but also I get it. And Tiffany for like having all this information and receiving a lot of information and not giving away anything to hint that she has it. And I mean, yeah, I just think they did a good job. Like some stuff might have seemed a little over the top, but clearly it worked.
Yeah, and it's getting to that. Like I think a lot of people are like, "How did Liana buy it?" I'm watching, and I knew for sure that like he wouldn't have that. It's like, well, yeah, we have more information. Like yeah. I am perfectly willing to forgive that she assumed that Xander was going to do it. Yeah, I think that she might have thought she was fooling them when they gave her that information. The beauty of their plan, however, is even if it's sussed out because he's being so over the top, he's doing the thing that you usually do of, look at me, I'm so immune, there's nothing you can do about it. The way that fake idols have always helped people. Hey, real quick, how about them fake idols though? Because it was great. We'll get into that real quick, but so I'm willing to forgive that because I think that even if people had figured out, oh, he's not giving, he's already given it to Evie, this is all a show, it wouldn't have mattered if she would have stole it from Evie. It's still, so they had completely nullified this thing, and this is kind of what I'm getting into. All of their interactions, both we see at camp, we see at tribal, we get a flashback of back at camp. This is because of the new elements added to this game. If it was just an idol, we know what to do about an idol. We just split the vote. It's not that hard. So everybody's like, get rid of all advantages. Seasons have proven that the old playbook knows. Like, frankly, it was getting annoying and frustrating that basically for like there were several seasons there where like every vote was a split vote because the only thing they had to worry about was idols. So this knowledge is power added another dimension, and I was fascinated by the countermeasures and the plots. And yeah, Xander knows he has this thing, but if it's stolen from me, then it's no good. So do I do this other thing? Do I give it to Evie? And then I knew he wasn't going to have it. The very fact that he voiced it to us, that this was a concern, and that Tiffany had shared that information, tells me he's giving it to Evie, but pretending. And in fact, when he pulls out the thing, I'm like, that's an empty thing. Oh, wait, it's an idol. That's fake. Like I had already plussed that out.
Yeah, but like I had... My mom got that it was a fake idol right away, and she's 70.
Yeah. But I hadn't, I'll admit right now, I hadn't made the extra leap that why not give it to Tiffany? Now, in my defense, it's happening pretty fast for us. Like they didn't have much more time than us, but they did have more. We have minutes. They had more minutes. So yeah, no, I thought all of that was fascinating, and only because of the extra information. Now, some of that is because, extra information keeps flying around there. If the knowledge is power was as secretive as maybe it's supposed to be, you wouldn't have saw as many counter moves, but I did, so I enjoyed it.
Right. I think what it really shows is how it's better, I think, for the game if they're just kind of upfront about what advantages are going to be like around in the season, right? like, as we said, like Dan Rangering, like he couldn't possibly know what to do with an idol nullifier, right? Because it had never existed before. The first time there were idols, they said that the idols existed. Yeah. And it still took a while for people to figure out what to do about that, you know? So I think like this worked out, obviously not for Liana, but like, you know, this became entertaining. And even if she had played it correctly, like it still at least would have been like she outplayed what they did rather than they just got completely bamboozled because of something that's never existed in any capacity before. And so like, obviously it's not like they have to be like, there will be this many idols and this is when the game, but like, you know, they get rules, I assume, beforehand. Like, I don't think it would be like ruin the show if they were like, here are some advantages that could, even if it's like, here's a long list of like what could be in the game, you know, so you can have like a steal a vote and a legacy advantage on that list, even if it never shows up. But to just introduce something completely new that's that powerful, or at least it would have been if like no one had known about it. Thanks for that, Shan. But like to do it, you know, so that helps. But if it had played out the way it was kind of supposed to, that would be, you know, to use that word again, like very unfair, because how do you counteract that? And I think you have to be able to be given a chance.
Now, it is built into this advantage that there is some chance to counter it, in that, unlike the nullifier, you are told that this thing is happening before the vote cast. Now, in this scenario, if she just steals Xander's idol, then they don't have another move. I suppose they could try to do something with Xander's extra vote at that point, but it would have been tough. But at least, like, you know, unlike what happened to Dan Rangerling, I don't think I said that right. Cop Dan, or the other time that was horrible. You don't even know
and
until
yet not one of the, and yet one of the better Dans.
Yeah, he's literally might be the best. Because it's such a low bar.
That is very rude to Dan Barry, astronaut.
He was the other one I was thinking about. But yeah, like they don't know, and all of a sudden Jeff's like, haha, this has happened. Like, at least there is the element of the knowledge of powers that you have to tell people before votes are cast that this thing is happening. So if you do have counter moves, if the Alliance had another idol or something like that, there is things.
That's fair. I just think it's especially tough that they introduced it into a season in which case people aren't kind of able to keep their idols secret. Like, obviously, Xander, you know, kind of gave it away and stuff, but like, as people have said, Nasir, sort of like how we were saying the people who won the immunity challenge did nothing wrong. Nasir did nothing wrong. Like, he, as far as we know, he has told no one about the idol, you know, but because everyone else did, they know about the phrase.
Yep.
What can he do with that? So
yeah, no, that's fair. But as you were saying, it actually worked out better from an interest standpoint for us. That everybody knew, because then we got to see a lot of planning and counter planning and all that. Like, even before they go to tribal council, the Shan is now realizing that like Evie might not be as vulnerable as we thought. This could be a problem. So I might have to vote out Sydney. Like, he's already moving on to counter plans. And like, so for the longest time, I've said my favorite episode of Survivor is the It's Eternal episode of Vidya. And what I loved about it is that we saw two groups, you know, planning out moves and counter planning around what was at that time a completely new twist. Idols had been invented, but not in the way that they were being played in that season, right? And also, most of those people had never watched Survivor before, so it was new to them. And if that's what this had, but maybe on steroids. I'm not, you know, saying necessarily this episode was better, but it served the same feeling for me, and that's why I enjoyed it, because it's like, they've come up with this plan. Oh, and now there's a counter move. Oh, there's a counter to the counter. Because yeah, Deshaun is the other person I had on my list as the most impressive, because not only is he able to do these moves and counter moves when suddenly being vulnerable in a way he wasn't supposed to be at all, until, you know, 3 hours before tribal council. He did it at tribal council too, when, you know, Liana's plan falls apart, they don't steal the idol. He, you know, gathers everybody out and cuts another target. Okay, well, now it's plan B, my plan B, Sydney. And then when it's obvious that that plan is out there as well, he's able to, you know, come up with the other plan, the split vote, like all on the spot, all, you know, countering it. Again, that for me symbolizes why we need to challenge modern players, because they're up for it, man. As confusing as everybody thought all these challenges were, or all these advantages are, and you know, to your point, to everybody's point, they know about them in a way that they weren't necessarily supposed to. We saw in real time people figuring out how to take advantage of them or how to defeat them.
Yeah, Deshaun did a really great job, and also clearly, like, the fact that he was even the target kind of shows that he's playing well, because it was shocking to me that it wasn't Danny, you know, just as the classic challenge beast type thing, but that they were clearly like, yeah, he might win a couple, but he's not going to win every one, just based on like his specific body type. You know, he's not an Aussie. He's more, well, granted, Brad Culpepper won a lot, but like typically it's the more like lithe, is that the word, guys, you know, a little leaner, and he's very strong. I'm not like, maybe the balance ones aren't gonna be there for him. Obviously this foot one was not great. What a sentence. But that was surprising, and I think really indicative of how kind of instantly like likable Deshaun probably is. My one note for him is that when he like called out Abby, which I was like so excited about, I really wanted him to not just call out like, oh, they told me about the idol, but to be like, yeah, they said they were gonna vote you out, man. Like they're like, oh, Xander is definitely gonna be going home. And I think at that point it's probably too late to change anything. But you never know what happens in the future, sort of in a like, not to bring up worlds apart of all things, but you know, the Dan got 2 votes, like thing, like, you know, he like Mike wasn't able to get like save Shireen, but it showed that there were some cracks, right? And I think that could have made him, especially because Deshaun, but really I think Danny is trying to, you know, keep some more of the men around. Like they might want to be able to have Xander as a shield is valuable. I think just that going a little step further with that would have been good, but you know, there was a lot going on.
Yeah, and just the repost itself was great. You know, Evie thinks that, you know, she's got all this, and like frankly, I just love the interplay between those two. I'm doing the thing that, you know, other people yourself are doing, is like giving credit. Evie must be the smart one. She wears glasses after all. But
and a bow tie.
Yeah. But yeah, if it is those two, the moves, and she's, I think she's one up, and then Deshaun's like, hey, but actually you told me that, all this. And again, if given more time, I could see Evie being like, no, like, yeah, I told him that because that's what I was told before I left the island, but I fought to keep you, dude. She would totally say dude too. But
who doesn't say dude? Do we not?
I just like, I can literally hear her saying it though. And yeah, like I just love that stuff. Like that's what I like about Survivor, and it's fine. It's fine if you don't. If you wish that it was more about the interpersonal stuff, I feel like we've gotten a lot of interpersonal stuff. But I love when the game evolves, and I feel like the show needs to, at times, maybe not as frequently as the show itself thinks it needs to, force some evolutions, because that's like, it excites me when somebody's find what new things to do to counteract what would otherwise seem like obvious stuff. You know, even early in the show's run, when the only twist was like a swap or something, it was starting to get frustrating as a fan. It's like, well, I know what's going to happen now. Now we're at the merge, and this alliance has numbers. And then, you get, Marquesa, those 4, kicking and screaming, but eventually flipping after it's made plain the obvious they're not there. And then you get like a Rob Cesternino flipping back and forth, and it's like, this is so exciting that I can ignore the sexism. Or, Boston Rob, making somebody on another tribe vote the way he wants to vote. Like all these, like, yes, these are new and exciting things. And tonight felt like, or I guess last night, felt like a new and exciting thing. The way that they were
2 nights ago by the time they hear this.
The way that they were moving and counter moving, even to something that was brand new. Of course, another thing that I liked about it is that like 2 weeks ago, I told everybody that like, it's not just a fancy idol nullifier. It might be more. It might lead to some exciting television. And I feel like I was right on that one. And there's nothing more I like than being right.
It's true. So that the whole like fake idol being useful doesn't even hurt him, guys. He's still so happy that he was right about something else.
Well, also, the fake idol. You did a thing that I said in that podcast 2 weeks ago was that maybe this will lead to a fake idol play. Because the people who were tuning in, hoping and waiting for me to eat crow about being wrong about fake idols. For one, I mean, I hope you guys know that wasn't going to happen. Like, I hope that you know hates
the taste of crow.
That's just not what happened. I talk about the things I'm right about more than the things I'm wrong about because those things don't happen. But more, I wasn't wrong. For 40 seasons, fake idols had no strategic value in Survivor. And I'm saying 40 because, they really had no strategic value before idols happened. But drop the 4 and keep the 1, man. This is a new era for Survivor, which... that was so corny, but I love it. That one crept in my head. Frankly, that was the reaction I was going for you. But for real, the idols mattered because they completely changed how idols work now. So this isn't even the first time when Ricard dropped the fake idol in the package that Jeannie had left behind. I was like, man, that's really smart, because in the first time in the history of Survivor, people would leave an idol sitting there until maybe I'll open it up later, because if I open it up now, it'll take away my vote. And then tonight it's like, they've never before could you steal somebody's idol before. So in that scenario, it works pretty well. So once Survivor changed everything about itself, then suddenly your fake idols, proved strategically useful. But when that existed in those other 40 seasons, they didn't. We talked a lot about the people who impressed us. Let's talk about the people who didn't.
I've been waiting for weeks to say that Shan is not that good of a Survivor player.
I am willing to concede a lot of these points, but I want you to get into them.
Like, I almost went full Andy a couple weeks ago and tweeted, Shan, 0% chance of winning the game. Granted, when you did that,
worked out perfectly.
Shan would win.
Never could go wrong. When do I ever make mistakes?
And now this isn't to say, and I feel like people think this a lot, the same way that people assume like, oh, you got 0 votes in the end, that means you're bad. Not being an excellent Survivor player doesn't mean you have no skills whatsoever. She clearly has a lot of like charisma that really draws people to her, right? But after this episode, I absolutely believe Ricard that he has been coming up with these plans. This is like peak like JT and Steven, man, like they need each other. Well, to be fair, we haven't really been able to see like what Ricard would do on his own. But like, so she can draw people in, sure, but the tactics, oof, like the strategy, not quite there. Again, I have to go back to last week. Why did you say that in front of Tiffany? That like
such an unforced error.
I will get into this with Liana because there's stuff there too, but Shan basically ruined this plan before it even started. And there was no reason for it. I also really don't get, because Deshaun brings up, like, obviously it worked out, Sydney went home. Deshaun brings up Sydney as a possibility relatively early on. It's just like, let's just skip the Evie thing. And Shan is for some reason so locked into Evie, even though they don't know each other. They've not spent that much time together. I feel like it is a little like, but they're wearing glasses. Because Deshaun and Danny being willing to vote out Sydney is a fucking gift.
Yes.
Is huge, because like, yeah, sure, they're talking about this alliance of 4, and that's great. And I hope they're able to do it. That's cool. I do not watch Big Brother, but like seeing Twitter talking about the cookout was like interesting, especially because it seems like they did it all in like secret, and like that's tight as fuck. Like that's so cool. That's really compelling. But I am never watching Big Brother. There's again too many episodes, too much content. But great, cool. But Danny and Deshawn are on a tribe that haven't voted anyone out yet. And for them to give up an option, and who's really one of their bigger allies, but they, they might not know that, like, that's huge.
Yeah, if anybody's taking your spot in the final three, it's probably Sydney.
Exactly. That is such an event. And to flip it back into insist that it's Evie is so bad on like multiple ways. Like, she's really, again, I'll get into like the things Liana's done, but like has really kind of fucked Liana's game by saying that. And then also like insisting, no, you should target Evie and you should do it right now. Because like, okay, I could see maybe Shanna's like, wow, on this type as Liana, I don't want her to have the option. She's not the one you need to worry about right now, because Liana's extra option is your extra option. If they want to get like a female alliance thing going on, you need that Yase connection. And like, maybe you don't want to do that, right? But having that, like, be the Kim Spradlin, have your swap tribe option, have your all women option, like, and to get Danny and Deshawn to get rid of one of their numbers, so you are now basically their only option. Like, yeah, there's still enough Lulu left, but they've clearly shown some cards. That was insane to me. Like, to just be like, no, what? Not Sydney. What the fuck do you care about Sydney, Shan? Like,
yeah, and they're doing this to cover your fuck up.
You don't know her. Like, what? And so that just, I was really unimpressed. Like, I thought Shan has had good moments. Like, clearly she has a good social game, but I think she has the kind of social game that if she betrays someone, they're going to feel it and they are not going to vote for her. I feel like, if she betrays Ricard, he might still vote for her. But if she betrays like Liana's not voting for her, if they had made, she lucked out that she already got rid of a lot of the people who trusted her. But like, if it had been in a jury phase, JD's not voting for her and Jeannie's not voting for her. I'm pretty confident in how they like that they felt pretty burned. If it's a jury stage, obviously in this world, they would have had so much time to get over it. But different, these are all like hypotheticals. The one thing that makes me think is that, she's clearly getting a good edit and it's getting kind of protracted by the edit. Maybe she's just like a really flawed winner. We've seen that happen. Or maybe she goes out at like 4 and she's like the likable one, who knows? But I'm not that impressed with her as a player. She's definitely interesting to watch, and could do cool stuff. And, people recover. Look at Tiffany. And then Liana, I really liked Liana going into this. I thought, especially for how young she is, she really seemed pretty good. Had a good head on her shoulders. And did the youth jump out today? Or not today, this week. And again, I get it. 20 is young. Like, I'm old enough now to really understand what you guys probably said to me like so much 7 years ago.
That you might have taken offense then. That's actually one of my favorite ongoing threads about like our community growing and being around for so long, is that people who took offense at that, like now are like, oh, I get it.
But even then, like I was 23, I think, when we started doing this, and that's even older.
That's actually a big difference.
20 as young, because that is just a time in your life where a lot of things change. And so, yeah, for all, like, I think, and you know what is interesting is Xander has a like job title as the Chiron, like it's just like app developer or whatever. But I wonder if that's just enough life experience outside of being just a student, which, like, no shade on being a student. That's what I was at 20. That's what you should be if that's your path, right? Like those are the years that one is in school. Totally fair. But it does just mean you haven't experienced as much, which is totally okay, but that's why it's really hard to win when you're that young.
Well, that's why I think Survivor itself is difficult, because you're interacting with people not your age. And if you're 20 years old, you probably don't do that much. I don't mean like you don't interact, but your interactions with older people, especially if we're talking a generation up in Survivor, how many people are full generation up for her? Not that many, but even 5-10 years, right? It's like older people, when you're of that age, if you're 20, are generally deemed as like authority figures. They're your parents, your friends' parents, teachers, bosses. They're not peers. You don't have as many peer-to-peer interactions with people that are older. And that becomes a problem in a game that is all about, interactions and peer-to-peer relationships, right? And I felt that from her this episode, that it felt like she was, say, letting Shan take charge a bit more. She was maybe a little locked in on, the peer that she knows, which is Xander. And I think this is a challenge that a lot of younger players have in Survivor. It's not just that they don't have any life experience, it's that they don't have a lot of experience interacting with other adults in adult matters. That's like an all youth season might be interesting. I like teen dramas and all of that. But
Survivor, the OC.
Yeah, I mean, it might not be, because I feel like that's what Big Brother is a lot. I don't know. Again, I don't know.
Who fucking knows? We'll never find out. Don't tell us.
Yeah, seriously, no, I don't care.
We don't care.
Maybe tell me so that I can stop making that comparison, I guess. But I think that's the problem more than anything. And that's why 23 versus 20 is a huge difference. Once you're out in that workforce and suddenly people that are 30-year-olds are colleagues, you understand a bit more with interactions. It might still lead to weird things like they can't believe like a slang term on Twitter at your advanced age. But in general, you'll have had some experience in dealing with, relating to, and talking to older people, which is, of course, even with all the advantages, what Survivor is about.
Right. And yeah, I think with Shan especially, like, you see a lot of that, because that's maybe why Liana's not pushing back on like the Abby thing, even though she's had no problem with Abby this whole time. Like she says, like I knew I probably would have to turn on her eventually, but like I didn't think so soon. Like, I don't think Liana wanted to do this, but just felt completely pressured. Everyone knew about her advantage. And so it's like, it's not useful when everyone knows about it, as we saw. And so I sympathize with her situation. There wasn't like a ton she could do, but I think the biggest thing for me is really not cultivating the Yase relationship as well. Because now, some of this I don't think is her fault, because it was like, there's just the like cultural thing where they're like, wow, she's really buddy with Shan a lot, which maybe they really were spending like a ton of time together. But we've seen like with like, say, Wendell and Jeremy, they like talk to each other for one afternoon. It's like, clearly they are an unbreakable bond. It's like they didn't even really know each other outside the game. Like, I think Wendell was like actually a fan of Jeremy from the show. And so like there's just a lot of that, like, oh, but they must, in a way that like, maybe Tiffany and Heather, just because they were the older people, but like if Evie and Heather were talking, I don't think it would be like, well, they really are bonded together now forever. Xander shockingly doesn't have any fears of his sex and gender, which is rare at this point of the season, but I'm pretty sure he's the last white man standing, which is shocking. You'll love to see it. But yeah, so like some of that, there's not a lot she can do there, right? Because people have these unconscious biases, but they really seem to get right away that she wasn't with them. Now Xander was already kind of seeing her at the outside, but like by Liana's perspective, it seemed like she knew that Xander was really the one on the outs, and like she was with Tiffany and she was with Evie. Of course, again, bring it back to Shan outing about the advantage, kind of screwed a lot of that up anyway, but definitely needed to do more, I think, to make them think they were all still in this together. Even just like talking about voting Sydney, like the fact that Sydney ended up with those people shows that like a lot of people weren't really doing what they needed to do to have decoy boots and stuff.
Well, like and that. We even see it, right? Liana is talking to Sydney because Sydney is originally with them to vote out Evie. Yeah. And all Liana has to offer her is, you'll know you're safe. I can't tell you how, and that's fine. I'm okay. The ketchup's mostly out of the bottle, but it's fine, trying to preserve some kind of mystery about this thing that would have been nice if nobody knew about. But she doesn't offer. And what if I don't? What if at tribal council I don't get that signal of my safety? Then what are we doing? And like from what we see, all we can ever really judge is what we see. Liana doesn't have anything for her because Liana knows that the plan B is her, and like, so what I was getting into, what I keep getting into is how like the thing I love most about this episode was the constant play and interplay and the creative thinking on display. None of that was by Liana, like her was very straightforward type play that, would have been fine for maybe the first 30 seasons of the show. Yeah, she's like, I have this thing. I know who has an idol. Let's get rid of them. No, don't worry. That situations have changed because of Shan. And she's aware that situations have changed. She's been told by Danny that they are aware that the situation has changed. Yet she's still like, no, it's fine. I know what's happening. There was never a pivot. And it's like, you're the one with the power here. Your alliance needs you more than they need anything. Deshaun is, putting his game in your hands. Evie could be immune. What should we do? And never once does she seem to want to flex that power into something that will be more beneficial to her, as you say. She's resistant to the idea of targeting Sydney when, like, that should have been the first thing. When they brought up Evie, it's like, yeah, that's nice, but how about Nasir or Sydney? And if she was more creative, yeah, Nasir, I will steal his idol. And now I've got an idol. They've lost a potential alliance partner, and I still have my potential alliance partners. But no, she just decided to go all in. So yeah, she is on my list of somebody who wasn't impressive to me. The Shan discussion. I think she has some soft skills that could help her bounce back, but it has been a rough 3 episodes for her. Like the past 3 episodes, each time I'm like, oh no. And the first time I'm like, well, at least she got that failure in with nobody but Ricard to notice when, she got overly heated about, or not even overly heated at first, trying to trick him out of the advantage the same way she did JD. And I was like, well, hopefully she learns that not everybody is a sucker like Brad and JD were. She clearly didn't, because the next time she pushes really hard past the cell on that. And I know some people take offense. It's like, why should she let Ricard have it? I'm not suggesting she should. It matters how you play these things. And, flop, sweat, and anger is not the way to win friends.
Yeah, my viewpoint is they both handled that badly by the second time. Like the first time I totally get Ricard, but the second time they both just like, guys, you're all each other has.
Yeah, stop. Bring it down. And like there, I was like, it also felt like the conditions were getting to them. They haven't eaten very much. Like but then telling Tiffany, like, what are you doing? Do you just not see her? Is this like when on Edge of Extinction, where like they're talking about getting rid of Joe Anglim and then the camera pans and he's just digging right behind them? Like, is that what this is? Did you not realize that this conversation involves somebody that isn't you? And then, because that was just a huge mistake. And then at tribal councils, they're telling Tiffany things again. Like, she has to be told, stop telling her things. So yeah.
And again, it's not like like if it was Liana, at least Liana has a relationship with Tiffany. Like, Shan doesn't know her.
Yeah, they bonded, I guess, that well by not eating the merch feast. And it's just, so yeah, no shit. I think because she's gotten a good at it, and thus maybe she could be a winner. It could be that there's time to recover her ability to win people over. That said, I'm starting to question that too, because let's look at the people she won over, right? Like, is it that impressive? Call me when she does it to somebody who seems a little bit smarter than the players that she's stowed over so far. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying it hasn't happened. Like Ricard certainly has her number. And then Erica and Heather also, like, why are you guys not involved in conversations until invited?
That killed me. Seeing, like, eventually they were talking, but like seeing when Jeff reaches, like, talks to Erica, and you just see Erica and Heather, of all people, just sitting there. It was so funny.
Yeah, and it's like, I know I said this in comments, like, that told me that the edit is treating them fairly.
Like,
they are not plot relevant. They just
if
are.
If someone who doesn't suck decides to like reboot the Funny 115 or do their own version, like, that has to be something. But it's so funny. It was so funny. I will say, I get that, like, some people, possibly video include, like, we're sort of questioning, like, why did Erica even vote with them? I think there's 2 things, which shows a lot of people playing badly, probably. I think it's very possible that the other side never approached them, which,
or at least didn't give them enough.
What are you doing? Like, we saw Ricard as the only person we saw speak to Erica. Now, obviously we don't see everything, but like, what? Like, I'm still like, the fact that Liana isn't trying to make Shan seem like she's pulling Shan into the Yase people, the fact that none of them are, and that can be fake, but like just optics, and like the fact that none of them seem to be trying to get in Erica, or like, has anyone spoken to Heather? Who can say?
I'm going to assume there was something, but I think the evidence shows that it wasn't much. It wasn't enough. Like, They didn't be like, Erica, they were going to vote you out. Like, she seemed to go with them fairly easily.
Right. Like, someone should have been saying that, because assuming that no one said, like, Erica, they were going to vote you out. People were definitely like, oh, but she was so clearly on the bottom, blah, blah, blah. Like, the choice was only between her and Nasir. Like, maybe she believes it really was rock, paper, scissors somehow, even though they didn't do it and Danny called it wrong. Paper, scissors, wrong, what? And
show Rambo.
Or like, maybe she's just like, oh, I guess they're just a little closer to Nasir. Like, it could be that simple, because it wasn't like it was out of everyone, right? Yeah. But most importantly, like, she doesn't know that Deshawn was thinking about throwing a challenge to get rid of her. This is, if we're following Erica's story, she's worried about Sydney. She tells Deshawn she's worried about Sydney. And at their first opportunity to vote someone out, Deshawn moves the target to Sydney. Sounds like a great ally.
Right? I mean, I guess the second one, because it was Evie to begin with.
Sure, but he was. But even then, it's like, okay, it was someone else who's not their tribe, so that's like kind of whatever, right? But like, was very willing to sacrifice Sydney. I mean, she might have even heard that Deshawn was saying Sydney before tribal, because that did come up and then like switched back. So, first of all, even if she's not feeling that way, like, she hears the votes for Sydney, she obviously wants, we know both her and Heather don't want Sydney around, so
yeah, I don't have an issue with them voting for Sydney. It's like, cool, that's my music, you're playing my song. It's just, from what we see, it never seems like they're trying to do anything to influence anything, and it's like, come on, man. You just spent 2 hours, like 2 days alone. Now, again, maybe she did. Frankly, what's unimpressive for me is that visual. Everybody else, the plans are happening. You're in the room where it happens, and you're not doing anything about it. And it's just like, cool.
The waiter at the room.
Yeah, I don't care. I've been told by that action, the fact that nobody else seems particularly motivated to involve you in this plan tells me that you're not part of the plot of this season, and it's fine that you're not in it. As much as people hate it, that's 16 people is a lot for a TV show. Very few ensembles carry that much. The ones that do take people out for episodes at a time. I think that covers kind of who impressed us, who not. I guess real quick, we already covered it. Sydney was the right call for the plan B. The only issue is maybe she should have just been plan A. Like, they did that.
It depends on whose point of view we're talking about, right?
No, Evie was a perfect plan A for Deshawn and Danny. Yeah. Less so for Liana and Shan, as we were discussing. Why are people telling everybody everything this season, up until including telling Tiffany the plan of how we're going to try to vote against her ally or not in the tribal council setting?
I really made a point to try to remember.
Stick to the plan.
Yes. No, I was going to say, was this stick to the plan? Because then I was like, I remember stick to the plan had something. Was it this? So I'm glad you got it too. So our commenter, stick to the plan, shout out. Brought up, I think, a great point, which is also something I think that, is in the similar spirit of what's been brought up with like the Black Alliance, right? But is just like when this took place, basically. And so with that, it was that they were, basically watching footage of the Derek Chauvin trial right before this, which, that would be a lot. Whereas for everyone else, it's that there's been a pandemic. They had to quarantine, you know. Obviously, everyone is in different situations, but like for a lot, they maybe, you know, haven't really talked to people a lot. And I think I've found, I think a lot of people have felt with like coworkers, maybe being a little more loosey-goosey. Like my little cohort at work is often just like, oh, yes, we're unwell. Like, just like, you know, it's sort of like, oh, how are you? It's like, bad. And so I think maybe there's a little that, just like the oversharing that has come with our collective trauma and loneliness. And yeah.
Particularly when you consider that people who are cast on reality TV tend to be extroverts, right?
Right.
Not too many introverts sometimes, and often that's a bad idea. You want people who express themselves outwardly on a television show. I mean, and what I love, I was planning on remembering that when going into this season, that like these are people coming off of a year of some level of disruption to their social lives, as you say. Not everybody is as careful or whatever, but frankly, like just interacting with strangers was a thing that wasn't happening. You know, arenas weren't letting people in.
And not even just about careful, like just some people, you know, maybe the ones in school, they're still in school somewhere. You know, if you have a larger family at home, you like see more people.
You might, but it's still less, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I absolutely believe that that's what it could lead. Because, you know, the observation I've been making is every time people go to this other island, they just kind of, almost like they're stepping out of the game. This is the person they can share secrets with, the person they just met. And yeah, I think it's just some people so unpracticed at dealing with other people that they're just blurting it all out. I think there's something to that. And that is interesting under that microscope. So what do we think about Liana feeling like she was on the outside? Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting because I know I definitely was like eyebrow raised when Xander was like, yeah, Liana's on the outs a couple episodes ago, and I'm like, interesting. But I didn't think Liana felt that way until now. And I don't know if she did feel that way until now, you know, if that's always been the case or if that's changed. Because it really seemed like the three, you know, that Evie, Tiffany, and Liana were fairly tight.
I mean, we did see Tiffany confide with Liana. They're like, I'm going to go through that guy's bag, and he's got to go.
So I don't know if something like changed there, or just once she had like another option. I mean, I think, you know, as not our community, obviously, but like as people were talking about, like, how dare the 4 Black people left, not even the only people cast, just the ones who are still in the game, like want to team up together. And the only tribe that had a white majority at the beginning still seems to be banded together. You know?
Yeah. They certainly are bonded together enough to pull off an amazing move that requires a high level of trust. Like the only reason why I thought Xander might not hand the idol over is that he has to like consider, are they just messing with me? Is this like, are they running a game on me? Am I Eric Reichenbach? You know, but ultimately it seemed like this there. So like, there's something there that, you know, these 3 white people bonded together. And, you know, I largely want to avoid giving too much oxygen to the other discussions happening out there. It's obviously important to express support for certain groups and condemn other things, but I think it's also a mistake to treat, vocal minorities, in this case, a small amount of people, as though they represent their opinions matter and that they can shape the discussion, that they represent some, a large forum. But I did also wonder, it's like, I wonder if they had anything to say about these people forming some kind of relatable bond that other people could catch up on. Of course, the answer is no. And the counter would be, well, they weren't talking about forming in a white alliance. Yeah, because we don't have to. We don't have to as white people. We don't have to discuss race. It is a privilege of whiteness that we get to act like discussing race is a taboo subject. Whereas,
also, like, how dumb would you have to be to say that on national television?
But yeah, people who are not white don't get that privilege. Race is not something that they get to opt out of. It is more of our society forces upon them as a daily part of their lives.
I'm sure a lot of people listening saw there was like a tweet that went viral for the wrong reasons by like CBS News. That's like, how soon is or like, how young is too young to talk to your child about race? Like, I saw someone quote tweeted with like, feels like they're missing an adjective there. I was like, because yeah, for some people that's you gotta say it pretty early.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and you go back, Liana, and her tribe choose Shan to go on that, and then Liana volunteers herself. Like, so maybe even at that moment she could just feel there's something that these guys have together that I don't. And it could be a real thing. It could be paranoia. Paranoia is a constant survivor. That she sees Evie bonding with Xander, and it's like, could just be gameplay. Frankly, right. Liana, you should be bonding with Xander more.
I really thought that they're the two young people.
Yeah, I mean that didn't work on Ua either between Sarah and JD.
But they were at least farther. Not that, but like that was like a 2024 thing. Like Xander and Liana are both 20, and I think Evie was the next youngest at 28. Like that is a big difference.
Yeah, it's disgusting that we have 3 people born in this millennium on this season.
Should not be allowed.
Anyway, I thought it was interesting. There's something there, and yet it's not what people are talking about. Probably because there were just so many awesome things to talk about. Is there anything else more to talk about, or did we cover it?
We have been going for a while, so maybe no matter what, we should just say it's enough.
All right. So if there's anything more to discuss, you can do that in comments on this post. If you can, and I guess if you're hearing me say this, you have. It's not so bad if you listen to the podcast before you comment on the post for the podcast.
Yeah, it's it helps with the discussion. Maybe you bring up things again. The people who are hearing this are not the people that's the problem, but like maybe something you're going to bring up was said on the podcast.
I mean, I love in the other post when they're like, I don't listen to the podcast, respect. But right. It's like this
you're
post
staying
is about
in your lane.
Right. Anyway, you can do that on our website at purplerockpodcast.com. And
so was that Purple Rob?
Purple Rob. That's actually my side project.
Yeah.
I don't know why he's purple, just branding, I guess. As I mentioned, the fantasy post is going to be delayed. So the anticipation builds of how we're going to score this clusterfuck of a scenario. Everybody coming at me with like, this isn't fair. That's not fair. Yeah. None of this is fair. If we do a fair solution, we've misrepresented the show. And again, to also notice that while I actually don't even have a vote, I just have a voice. I have no
and bias. A loud one.
Yeah, very loud. I have no dogs in this race. I don't play. Anyway, so that'll be probably Monday. You can follow us on Twitter. I am Purple Rock Andy. You are
Purple Rock Emma.
The show is Purple Rock Pod. Subscribe in all the places, including YouTube, where this one is actually a video. Anything else?
I love Buster Posey so much. I'm so sad.
Maybe you can attend his jersey retirement ceremony. Probably not. That's a big trip for you.
It is. So if gosh, those long usernames is harder for me to remember, but Pi like something, my other Giants fan, if you're listening, I can't remember if you're one of the ones who listens or not, talk to me about it in the comments. I'm sad.
And you can do that on purplerockpodcast.com, not at Purple Rob.
Man, you're fucking that up.
I can't even do the mistake twice in a row, but I can hit the theme music.
Hey.